HB 2305 is a bill that passed the House. Basically, it was called the Voter Fraud Prevention something other. It's always got one of those names that isn't really quite what it does. Our problem basically with it comes to the fact that it changes the signature requirements for third parties to get on the ballot. Now, the way it was pitched was, okay, it's going to make it even for everyone, which sounds good. The problem is, for example, the Libertarian Party, or even the Green Party here in Arizona, they are required to get more signatures than they have party members just for their primaries. Now, this is to get on the primaries. This isn't for the actual ballot. This is just for them to figure out who they want to put on the actual ballot. So they have to go outside of their party's platform to independents to get these signatures just to get in the primaries to then get someone into the primaries, which has some negative consequences, really.
And the way that the Arizona voter roll, I guess, the registration numbers, it's very skewed right now. I mean, it's about a third Republican, it's about a third Democrats, and all of the other parties to be announced are the other third. So it's really tough for that third party candidate to go out and get enough votes to even get onto the preliminary ballot, let alone get onto the main election ballot.
So let's use the Libertarian Party, for example. I mean, what did it take for a candidate, say, in this area to get on the ballot?
Previously?
Yeah, and what is it going to take now?
It went from hundreds to thousands.
Okay.
So, I mean, and I can understand why some people said, oh, it's not fair that they got on the ballot for this number of votes, but really it kind of is because it's their own party. It's kind of like, I can't imagine going to Republican and saying, hey, you're going to need to go to independents for your primary, and they'd be like, no, wait, it's a closed primary, you know?
But you can go to independents.
You can.
Yeah, I mean, let me give you an example. When I ran for council, I had to get like 800 signatures for local seat. I wound up getting about 1,000, but I was required to get around 800.
Wow.
And I heard some folks that were running for like Congress, and they were like, I got to get 80, you know, or county board, I had to get 100. And I'm like, wow, I had to get 800 and I got 1,000 to have a buffer. So, I mean, is there any argument there that it's or is that just the difference between a local race and a statewide race? What does a Republican, for example, have to get? What did they have to get under the old system here in CD1?
I'm not exactly sure of the numbers, but it was a percentage of the registered. That's how
and is that how it is now? I mean,
no, now it is a
fixed number.
Fixed number that you've got to hit. So that's why for the larger parties it's advantageous, and for the smaller parties it's the opposite.
So where is it at? Because it was a House bill. It passed. The governor signed it, put it into law. But now I understand there's a referendum.
Yeah, us and a lot of other people started gathering signatures. We're like 90% over the amount we need. So it's absolutely going for referendum. Hopefully we'll be able to do something about it. It's just been really unfortunate. I've talked with a lot of Republicans in particular about this, and some of the higher-ups in the party and some party officials. And they've basically said that the reason they did this was because they lost certain districts, they feel, because libertarians in particular pulled votes away from Republicans. And this is where I actually have a problem with it, because this is where it starts getting a little nasty. So they created a bill because people didn't vote the way they wanted, and they feel this will keep people off the ballot and remove that option, and then they're thinking that because libertarians are close to Republicans and Democrats, that they'll absorb those votes, which will push them over the Democrats, which I feel is really disingenuous. I think if someone wants to vote a certain way, like, you either, A, have to convince them that your option is better, or appeal to their interests, not remove their option.
There are so many flags for me when it comes to election time. There are so many people who want to stand by whatever letter is behind their name, and they don't want to take the issue by issue and personally decide on it. They just want to go with whatever the party says, this is what I'm going to vote, and that kind of bugs me. For me, it's one of those things that I want to vote Libertarian because I don't think either one of the parties, the major parties right now, is doing what I want them to do for this country. They're both so busy trying to separate and divide and not work on the bigger problems that we really need to get fixed. So when the Republicans created this bill and they said, oh, wait, we're losing votes to the Libertarians, therefore a Democrat won, well, now we're going completely a different direction than I would have gone either way. So Republicans or Democrats would have won. It's like, how do we get that third-party candidate into the mainstream enough to get enough votes to win? There's my real question.
But I guess part of the argument for this, and I'll just play the devil's advocate because there's no one here arguing counter, is that they were trying to get the same percentages of registered voters within that party. You know what I'm saying? They were trying. I think that was the intent of the bill, was if you have 100,000 Republicans, you need 5%. I'm just throwing out a number. 5% of that electorate that's registered. If you had 1,000 Libertarians, you need 5% of that. Wasn't that the intent of the bill?
Yeah, that was the way it was pushed, and that I wouldn't say that's the intent. I'd say the intent was to keep third parties off the ballots so that the votes weren't getting divided or split like they feel. Right now, a lot of Republicans feel that there's this conspiracy to divide the party, along this kind of libertarian, authoritarian line.
Mm-hmm.
But really, that's not an outside force doing that. That's internal.
I think it's the folks that are inside the party that are realizing that the leadership has gone astray.
That's exactly right.
I mean, that's as a former lifelong R name, R voter, I can tell you that I don't vote R anymore. I don't vote D. I always vote for my third party choice because most of the time, the guy that's got the R behind his name, that's got all the big votes and got all the money behind him, he's walking in stride with the guy that's got the D behind his name. They're just trying to spin it the opposite direction so that you look good on TV.
It's pretty much how a lot of people feel nowadays. The differences between the two primary parties, Democrats and Republicans, is it's growing smaller. They differ on some social issues, but really that's just a lip service they play, because when either one's in office, things pretty much remain the same.
Yeah, and I think it's, let me talk locally here. I mean, we've had some crossover here locally. I think we've formed a pretty good model sometimes, because there's been times where a couple of my colleagues, some of them are independents, some of them are Democrats. We've come together to make policy that I think was pretty effective. So I think on a local level, you can influence that and make it a lot better. But on a national level, on big state politics, there's still this dirty side of things that we need to correct. I think we have somebody.
We've got Bob Thorpe on the line.
Bob Thorpe,
Good morning, Bob.
Thorpe, how are you doing today?
Hey, good morning, guys. I've been enjoying listening to the show this morning.
Well, we can hear it straight from one of our legislators, about this bill. I mean, I was talking about what the intent was, Travis. It's just good since this is now going to be out there as the voters are going to decide now. In November, it's going to the ballot. So what are your thoughts, Bob?
Well, first off, goodness, when this bill came before us, it was very late in the session. It was not, it's a fairly complex bill, and the part about changing the percentages of petitions wasn't even discussed in any of our committees. So this was not on most of our radar as far as this being an issue. In all truth, I have real mixed feelings about this, because I don't want to see any third-party person disenfranchised as far as getting on the ballot. But at the same time, it really has a couple of components. One of the components is fairness. In other words, is it really fair for one person to have to get 500 to 800 petitions signed to get on the ballot, and somebody else can get on with 35 or 40? For example, at Coconino County Fair, I was there for 30 hours and I got roughly 40 signatures.
Well, Bob, how many signatures do you need to get on the ballot?
They haven't given us the count yet.
What was the last time?
And the new, it was, I think it was right around 500.
500, okay.
We usually shoot for about 20% over.
See, this is what I'm talking. This is what I was just talking about, though. As a councilman, I had to get 800. I got 1,000, and so Congress, as you're a Republican, you had to get about 500 plus overages. So how does this change?
Well, it changes because each candidate now has to get a percentage of all registered voters. So in other words, there'll be districts where the Republicans will have to get more signatures than they did last time. There'll be districts where the Democrats will have to get more signatures. And of course, because of the way the law is written, third parties will also have to get the same number. Now, the argument that let's say the Green Party person has to use independents Well, they have that opportunity, and I as a Republican also have that opportunity.
But let me ask you this, Bob, because you know, this is for the primaries. So when these ballots are going out, I know I'm registered Republican, so I get the Republican primaries. So with these Libertarian ballots go to Libertarians. So are they going to be in a situation where they're having to collect more signatures than they're even going to be sending out ballots to people? And that just doesn't make sense.
The independents can also vote for the person at the primary as well. So in other words, so your question is, for example, with the Green Party, they only have a handful of people here in the county. They need to start working and build their party. In other words, you know, if they only have 35 members, let's say, in Coconino County, do they have even the slimmest of chances of winning an election?
So you see, that's a thing though. Now, that's something I've heard people say a lot, that you shouldn't be on a ballot unless you have a chance of winning, which I actually disagree with. I think that if you are part of a party and that party is legally formed and run and they go through their primary, you put on there, and even if you only get 35 votes, that doesn't really seem like a bad thing for anyone else involved, except for it's a good thing for those 35 people to get a vote for who they want.
Of course, it's expensive to anytime that you run a campaign, or you run an election. There's expense associated with it. But then you also don't you have to ask the question that if the person absolutely doesn't even have a chance of winning, and they still throw their hat in the ring, why exactly are they doing it? You know,
I can tell you exactly why, Bob. This is why you have fringe candidates get on the elections. All right, they are going to talk about issues that are not being talked about by the mainstream. They're going to talk about issues that are interested to a wider variety of people. And when those people go and vote, even if they only get 1% or 2%, or let's say like Ross Perot when they get 19%, those issues that brought those voters to them are going to get more discussion. They're going to get more airtime, and they're going to get more exposure as a result of that. And ultimately, issues are what matter.
Okay, hey, we're gonna come back. We have to go to a commercial. I think this is good, so we'll continue on. I was gonna let Travis go, but Travis, you're taped down. You gotta stay now. Can you stay on the line, Bob?
Absolutely. And
okay.
Travis, hey,
we got to go real quick to commercial, and
thanks for coming in, Travis.
No problem, Bob. If the voter votes for you, you know, it's because you've campaigned, you own that vote because of the issues you represent. And if they're not voting for you, you don't own those votes. And in my mind, there's only one way to own a vote, and that's to talk to the people, figure out what their concerns are, and see if you can either, one, address their issues in the way they want, or two, to convince them that your way is better. The third option of taking away making it more difficult for them to have an option to vote for, I think it's going to backfire on those who support it personally.
Well, possibly. Now, a couple of real prime questions or baseline questions I'd like to ask is, what is the purpose of an election? You know, in other words, if a person jumps into the race and they can do it with 35 ballots or 35 petition signatures, and all the people that they're running against have to go out and get 100 times that number, or 800 signatures. Is it as a forum just to get a message out, or is it that you're actually running for an office? So in other words, if you are presenting yourself to the voters and you're asking a voter to give up their vote and to check that box or to punch out that chat or what have you, and you had no intention of winning.
Well,
wait a second. Let me finish my thought. And you had no intention of winning. You weren't in there, and doing all the work to actually be, a viable candidate. Then I think you've been kind of dishonest to the voter, haven't you? In other words, an election isn't a forum just to get out a message. Goodness, don't we have enough ways of doing that?
It's not just that, but it is that though. It is that.
We have social media. We have writing letters to the editor. We have all kinds of ways of getting out a position. Goodness, you can show up at every single campaign event and stand up and ask the people up on the stage, what's your position on food safety, or what's your position on on being able to have your own garden. I mean, you can bring up
there's
all the issues you're concerned about without being a candidate.
Hey, Bob, Jeff here.
And I just don't think it's fair to ask the voter to give up their vote if you really don't have.
No, Bob, you know what's not fair? Removing their option to vote in the way that they feel they want to vote. A voter has the ability to say, I want this person to be my governor. It's not, this is the problem I have with a lot of people, the way they think about voting. You think, I've got to vote for someone who has the best chance of winning. That usually comes from the idea of, I don't want this other person to win. For Democrats, I don't want a crazy Republican. For Republicans, I don't want to...
We've all heard the term the lesser of two evils.
Yes.
I don't want to vote for the evil guy, no matter what the letter is behind his name. I want to vote for the guy I want to vote for because he believes the same things I want to believe. And
which means if you don't want to vote for the one or the other individuals, you don't even have to vote at all, of course. But I think the purpose of an election, though, is to get somebody elected. So in other words, I agree with you.
But isn't that going to happen even if there's 1 million people running and 999,000 of those only get one vote? We still have a winner. The
cities and counties right now are complaining because we've consolidated the ballots or consolidated the election.
I got to talk to you about that, Bob. Let me talk to you about that one. Bob, we only have 3 minutes, and we can probably go on all day. But the consolidated elections, we're in a hard spot here. And real quickly,
Absolutely.
Basically, the legislature passed the law saying that all cities have to have their elections November of even years. We have ours in May of even years, and our charter states that. But now there's an appeal. And we don't know if we should call our election for May or November, and we're in such a hard spot here legally. It's really tough for us because of that decision, Bob. And I know the intention was good, but Bob, we have to go. I'm sorry, we got like 2 minutes left.